I bought my first vacation home, but my sister said I was abandoning family values. She took the keys and yelled, "If you don't care, maybe I should." "You bought a whole second house without telling anyone?" Helena asked, arms crossed over her chest. "That's not just a purchase, Margot. That's a statement." "It's a house," I said quietly. "It's not a declaration of war." "You didn't even ask if we might want to use it too," she shot back. "Do you even care about us anymore?" That was the moment I realized my sister didn't see me as a person with her own life, she saw me as an extension of the family. And by claiming something of my own, I had, in her mind, betrayed them. I'm Margot. I'm 46, divorced for a few years now, no kids, and I work full-time in Chicago as a corporate travel coordinator. It's not a job that draws much attention at parties, but I've done well for myself. I've always lived within my means, always saved, always done the responsible thing. And after decades of pushing my needs down for the sake of others, I decided to give myself something I'd always dreamed of, a place that belonged just to me. That place came in the form of a small, cedar-shingled cottage on the outskirts of Galena, Illinois. If you haven't been to Galena, it's a little historic town near the Mississippi River with 19th-century brick buildings and winding streets. Think of it as a quieter version of New England towns, charming, slow, a little touristy in the fall when the leaves turn. I visited on a whim one weekend in March. I'd been driving out of the city with no plan, just a need to be alone. And then I saw a for sale sign down a dirt road. The house looked like something out of an old postcard, tucked away, quiet, with a front porch that begged for a rocking chair and a glass of wine. After a single walk-through, I made an offer. My finances were in order. I didn't need anyone's permission. And for once in my life, I did something purely for myself without running it past family. I didn't think it would be a big deal. My sister Helena is 7 years younger than me. She married young, had her first child at 24, and lives in Joliet with her husband and 3 children under 12. She's very family-centric, the kind of person who calls 3 times a day to check in on our parents, organizes every birthday party down to the color-coded balloons, and still uses phrases like family values without irony. Our relationship has always been tense. I'm the quiet one, the private one. She's the self-declared glue that holds everyone together, which often means she inserts herself into things without being asked. I've spent most of my adult life managing her moods and trying not to rock the boat. So when I finally told her about the house at a casual family dinner after the deal was closed, the place was furnished, and I'd spent 2 peaceful weekends there alone, I wasn't prepared for how she'd react. It was a Friday night. I'd invited my parents, Helena, and our brother Ian, who lives in Milwaukee and comes down a few times a year, over to my condo in the city. I made lasagna and garlic bread, opened a bottle of wine, and thought I'd share my little victory. "Wait, back up," Helena said, mid-bite. "You bought a house? Like, another one?" "Yes," I said, smiling. "In Galena. It's small. Just a getaway." Her fork hit the plate with a little clink. "You didn't tell anyone you were even thinking about doing that." "I didn't think I had to," I said, still trying to keep the tone light. "I just needed something that was mine." The silence at the table was loud. My mom furrowed her brow but said nothing. My dad, bless him, raised his glass and said, "Well, you've earned it." Helena didn't say anything for the rest of the meal. She helped herself for seconds, laughed politely at our dad's jokes, but the coldness in her eyes said everything. And then she left early, saying something vague about one of the kids needing cough syrup. I didn't hear from her for almost 2 weeks. Then one Saturday morning, I drove up to Galena. I usually leave before sunrise to beat the traffic and get there just in time for coffee on the porch. But that day, when I pulled into the driveway, something felt off immediately. The porch lights were on. The door was slightly ajar. And when I walked inside, it was like I'd stumbled into a parallel universe. Toys on the floor. Half-eaten cereal bowls in the sink. A phone charger plugged in beside the couch that wasn't mine. A pile of shoes by the door. I froze. My first thought was that someone had broken in. Then I heard cartoons playing softly in the back bedroom. And laughter. I walked toward the sound and opened the door. There she was. Helena. Curled up on the guest bed in her pajamas, holding a mug of coffee, while her 3 kids watched TV next to her. "Morning," she said, like it was completely normal. I stared at her. "What are you doing here?" She didn't even blink. "We came up last night. Your keys were in the drawer in the kitchen. I figured if you weren't going to use the place, we might as well. I was coming today." "Well, you didn't say that." "It's my house, Helena." She shrugged. "Is it really a house if you never share it?" That sentence stuck with me like a blade slipped under the ribs. It wasn't just about the house. It was about control. About her expectations. She wasn't just borrowing the place. She was staking a claim. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a fit. I just asked her to leave. She refused. "We just got here. The kids are having fun. You can't seriously ask me to pack up and go just because I didn't fill out a reservation form." "You didn't ask, Helena. I'm your sister, Margot. Since when do we need permission to be part of each other's lives?" I left. Got in my car. Sat there for 15 minutes with my hands on the wheel, trying not to cry. Then I drove into town, found a locksmith, and had every lock on the house changed. That was the line she crossed. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. I stayed in Galena that night, holed up in a tiny motel just off Main Street. The kind with floral bedspreads and vending machines outside the rooms. I could have driven home, but I didn't want to. I couldn't go back to Chicago yet. I felt displaced emotionally and literally. My own house, the one I bought with my money, had become unfamiliar overnight. The locksmith had promised to finish changing all the locks by late afternoon. I got the new keys around dinnertime and drove back just after dark, hoping Helena had left by then. She had. The house was empty. But she'd left behind signs of her presence: crayons under the coffee table, a baby sock under the bed, and a half-used bottle of children's ibuprofen in the bathroom. She'd even left a casserole in the fridge, wrapped in foil with a sticky note on top that said heat at 350. It felt passive-aggressive in the most domestic way. I threw it in the trash. That week, I got a series of texts from her. They started to be civil, even friendly. "Hey, I didn't mean to overstep. The kids loved the house. Hope we didn't mess anything up." I didn't reply. Just thought it'd be nice for them to get away for a bit. "You're always welcome at our place, you know." I left that one on read too. Then they escalated. "So now you're ignoring me? Seriously?" I said I was sorry. "You don't get to act like some victim when you leave your keys in the kitchen. That's practically an invitation. Mom and Dad think you're being dramatic, by the way." I knew that wasn't true, at least, not entirely. I'd talked to Mom the day after it happened. She'd been quiet on the phone, as if trying to absorb everything before reacting. "She shouldn't have done that," she finally said. "But, you know how Helena is." That phrase, "you know how Helena is," has been the family's unofficial motto since 1989. It's how we explained away every tantrum, every boundary she stomped over, every time she took up space that didn't belong to her. I wasn't interested in that excuse anymore. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a text. A proper envelope with my name and address in Helena's rounded handwriting. The stationery had little bluebirds on the border, left over from some craft kit, no doubt. Inside were 2 pages of what I can only describe as a guilt-laced monologue. She wrote about how she felt disconnected from me lately, how she worried I was withdrawing from the family, how she thought maybe the vacation home was my way of checking out of life. Then she pivoted to the kids. "They love you, Margot. They talk about you all the time. They think the house is magical. It's not fair to them to lose you just because you're going through some midlife isolation phase." I read it once. Then again, there was no real apology. No admission that what she did was wrong. Just veiled accusations dressed up as concern. I didn't write back. But I did call my attorney. I didn't want a war. I didn't want drama. But I wanted to protect myself. So I had her draft a very polite, very legal letter that outlined the basics. The property was mine. I owned it outright. No one was to enter without written permission. Trespassing would be reported to authorities. End of story. I didn't want to send it, but I did. Helena didn't respond. Not for 2 months. During that time, things in the family shifted. Subtly, but noticeably. Thanksgiving was tense. She barely looked at me the entire meal. I brought dessert and set it down next to her pumpkin pie, and she moved hers to the other end of the counter like mine was radioactive. Her kids ran up to hug me when they arrived. She said nothing. My parents asked me multiple times if I'd reconsider softening my stance. But they didn't push. Ian, our brother, texted me privately, "She crossed a line. You don't owe her anything. Let them play peacekeepers if they want." It was the first time I felt seen by anyone in the family. I started spending more time at the cottage. I kept a suitcase packed in my Chicago closet so I could leave at a moment's notice. I'd drive up after work on Fridays, listen to audiobooks on the way, and get there just as the sun set. I added fairy lights around the porch. I bought a fire pit for the backyard. I planted bulbs in the front garden in the hopes that spring would bring something new. I didn't invite anyone. And I didn't feel guilty. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and walk through the house barefoot, just listening to the silence. It wasn't eerie, it was peaceful. Like the house itself understood what I needed from it. I journaled. I cooked meals for one without apology. I stood by the creek and watched the water run slowly and constantly. I didn't miss my sister. I missed what I wanted her to be. The version of her that could have been happy for me. The one who would have asked to visit rather than just showing up. The one who understood that love doesn't mean possession. But that version didn't exist. One night in early spring, I came back from a walk and found a small package sitting on the porch. There was no return address. Just my name in block letters. Inside was a photo of me and Helena, taken 20 years ago. We were in Michigan, at a lake cabin, arms wrapped around each other in matching sweatshirts. We looked happy. Young. Tired from swimming. Hopeful. There was a sticky note inside. "Do you even remember this version of us?" "I do. H." I held the photo for a long time. I did remember that trip. It was the last time we spent a weekend together, just the two of us, before her wedding. Back when we could laugh without resentment. Before everything got layered in obligation and guilt and unspoken expectations. But remembering something doesn't mean you can go back to it. I didn't respond. But I didn't throw the photo away either. It's still in my nightstand drawer. I didn't talk to anyone about the package. Not my therapist. Not Ian. Not my parents. I wasn't sure what there was to say. That Helena was trying to stir something back to life? That she wanted me to feel something she was too proud or too unable to say outright? I already felt something. But I didn't want to give her that version of me anymore, the version who would have folded at the first hint of nostalgia. She was pushing on a bruise that hadn't quite healed. I let the picture stay in the drawer, buried under a couple of travel maps and a bottle of lotion I never used. I could have mailed it back, could have called her and asked what she wanted from me. But we'd been stuck in that cycle our whole lives. Helena makes a mess. Helena reaches out without actually apologizing. And I cave, because peace feels easier than conflict. Not this time. A few weeks later, I went up to Galena for a long weekend. The town was waking up from winter, tourists slowly returning, windows of antique shops thrown open again. I'd become a bit of a regular at a little cafe on Main Street called Roots and Bloom. The owner, a woman named Barb, had started greeting me by name. You've got that face, she said once. City woman hiding out in the woods. I've seen a few. We'd laugh over coffee, and I'd sit by the window reading or people watching. I'd never had that before, quiet companionship that didn't come with the price tag of emotional labor. On Saturday morning, as I stepped out of the cafe with my coffee, I spotted a familiar car driving down the street. Black Kia Sorento. Stickers on the back. The same one Helena drove. My stomach flipped. I told myself it couldn't be her, maybe just the same model. But when I drove back to the cottage that afternoon, I found her car parked along the gravel road. Not in the driveway. Not on my land. Just far enough away to not be technically trespassing. I pulled in, parked, and sat in the car with the engine running. She was standing near the property line, holding a Tupperware container in both hands like it was a peace offering or an unexploded device. She waited for me to get out. She didn't approach. I opened the door and stood behind it. Why are you here? I was driving through, she said. Galena isn't on the way anywhere. She gave a tiny laugh. I guess not. Silence settled between us. I made lemon bars, she finally said, holding up the container. Thought you might want some. I don't. Her face flickered, just for a moment. I didn't come to fight, she said. You came uninvited. Again. She nodded slowly. I thought maybe I could see the house. Like, for real this time. As your guest. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for a moment, I saw my little sister, the one who used to sneak into my room and lie beside me when it thundered, who cried the day I moved out for college, who once wrote me a letter on the back of a napkin saying, I wish you weren't so far away. But then I remembered everything else. The keys were taken without asking. The trespassing. The sense of entitlement. The casserole. The note on the photo that tried to tug my heartstrings without acknowledging any of the damage. You didn't even say sorry, I said quietly. I've said I was sorry in so many ways. No, Helena. You explained. You were justified. You never once said you were wrong. Her mouth opened. Closed. She looked down at the lemon bars. Then back at me. I was wrong, she said. Okay? I was wrong. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. She kept going. I thought I was doing what was best for all of us. I thought you were isolating. I got scared. But it wasn't my place. I see that now. It didn't sound rehearsed. But it didn't quite land either. Maybe I was too far removed now to feel it the way I once would have. I didn't know how to handle you being separate, she admitted. You've always been part of us. The quiet one, but there. And when you bought this place, when you didn't tell us, I felt like you were saying we weren't your home anymore. You're not, I said, and I surprise even myself with how steady my voice was. Not in that way. Not in the way that means I owe you access to every part of my life. Helena stood there for a while. Then she placed the container down on the grass, just inside the line. I'll leave it here, she said. You can throw it away if you want. She turned to go. I didn't stop her. The lemon bars sat there for 3 hours. I could see them from the window. Eventually, I walked out, picked up the container, and brought it inside. I didn't eat any. But I didn't toss them either. They sat on the counter until Monday morning, when I packed up to drive back to the city. When I got home, there was a voicemail from my mom. Helena told me she saw you. Said it went okay. I hope that's true. I know it's complicated. I just want you both to be happy. You don't have to call back. Just wanted you to know I love you. And then, a pause. And a quiet, I hope you're doing okay out there. I replayed that last line 3 times. Not because I didn't believe her. But because it was the first time in a long time that someone in my family asked how I was, instead of what I was doing for them. I didn't call back right away. I didn't call Helena either. Instead, I made myself tea, sat on the couch, and watched the way the light poured through the windows of the condo. Then I opened my laptop and booked another weekend in Galena. The drive to Galena that weekend felt different. Lighter. I had no specific plans, just time, solitude, and an idea that had been growing quietly in the back of my mind. It had started after Helena's surprise appearance and awkward apology. Something about her tone, about the way she still acted like she was owed a piece of my life, lit a different kind of fire in me. Not anger. Not hurt. But clarity. I realized I didn't want another fight, another Cold War, or another half-hearted reconciliation. I wanted closure. But not the kind that involves words. I wanted her to truly see the line that had been drawn. Not just told where it was, but to feel it in a way that couldn't be dismissed. So I started planning. Over the next few weeks, I put every bit of effort, creativity, and focus I could into transforming the cottage. Not just upgrading it, but curating it. I hired a local artist to paint a custom mural in the reading nook. I brought in vintage furnishings from antique shops in Galena, Dubuque, and even Madison. I built a small greenhouse out back with Ricky, the handyman. I landscaped the front yard into a native pollinator garden, and installed a tiny stone pathway that led to a meditation bench by the creek. I even gave the house a name, Stillwater Hollow. I had a carved wooden sign made and hung it under the porch light. It became more than a retreat. It became an extension of me. Then I listed it. Not for sale but as a high-end, by invitation-only writer's retreat. I wasn't a writer, but I had spent enough time in the corporate travel world to know how to spin a story and create an experience. I launched a simple website with photos, testimonials from a few friends I'd invited for a trial run, and a personal note that said, "This space was created for quiet souls. It's not open to the public. It's for those invited to take pause, reflect, and remember that their inner lives are worth honoring." I didn't announce it to my family. I didn't have to. Helena found out the way I knew she would through Instagram. I'd created a page for Stillwater Hollow, and a mutual friend of ours shared a post from the account. A photo of the garden path with the caption, "Sometimes the door to peace is the one you close behind you." The text came 48 hours later. "Seriously? You turned it into a business? After everything we talked about? After everything I said?" No greeting. No punctuation. Just pure indignation. Then, "So we're just not family anymore, I guess." I didn't respond. I waited a few days. Then I sent her a digital brochure for Stillwater Hollow with a short note, "This is what my peace looks like." Not a retreat for family. A retreat from it. She didn't answer. And that was when the shift truly happened. The silence that followed wasn't passive-aggressive. It wasn't Cold War silence. It was acceptance. A boundary finally respected, because there was no way to push through it without revealing herself to the world. She couldn't play the martyr if she blew up a private, restorative retreat for artists and survivors and women finding their voices again. She couldn't show up uninvited anymore without looking absurd. I didn't block her. I didn't shame her. I just moved forward without her. And the revenge, if you want to call it that, came not in screaming matches or social media callouts, but in the simple act of reclaiming something she tried to take from me, ownership of my own story. Over the next year, Stillwater Hollow became something special. I hosted small gatherings, 6 women at a time, curated by application. They weren't influencers or bloggers. They were nurses recovering from burnout. Divorced mothers rediscovering themselves. Retired teachers writing memoirs. 2 sisters, once estranged, who reunited over shared grief. I didn't advertise it beyond the private site and word of mouth. I didn't need to. One day in the fall, I got an email from someone named Naomi. She wrote, "I don't know if you remember me, but I met your sister once. Years ago. We were both in a parenting group. She mentioned your cottage. How she thought it was such a waste that someone would build something beautiful and keep it all to themselves. I didn't know what she meant at the time. But I just found your website. And now I get it. If you ever have space, I'd love to apply. I think I'm ready to make something beautiful too. That email sat with me for days. Not because of what it said, but because of what it confirmed. Helena had told the world a version of me, selfish, distant, ungrateful. And now the world was seeing another version, one that didn't shout or demand or manipulate. One that simply created a place where people could breathe. The last time I saw Helena was at our father's birthday dinner. She was civil. Distant. The kind of politeness you reserve for people who no longer live in your inner circle. There were no barbs. No snide comments. Just surface talk. We spoke about Dad's cholesterol and weather patterns. At the end of the night, she didn't hug me. She just gave a nod. That was all. And it was enough. I drove back to Stillwater Hollow that night with the windows down. The air was crisp. Autumn had started painting the leaves gold and red again. When I arrived, the house was waiting for warm light spilling through the windows, the porch swing moving slightly in the breeze. I unpacked slowly. Opened a bottle of wine. Lit a fire. And then I sat in the garden, the one Helena said should have been for all of us, and watched the stars come out. Not out of spite. But out of peace. Because some revenge doesn't need a target. Some revenge is just finally living your life without permission.